Okay. So are you all able to see my screen?
Yes, Sumit.
Okay, perfect. I'll just. Okay. So yeah, good morning everyone. Thanks for joining. So today's agenda for us would be we would be we would be having quick recap. Pardon, it won't be on my screen. Okay. Sorry. We would be having a quick recap, and then we would be understanding multiple operations. Like as we discussed in earlier sessions, the HTTP protocol which we are using actually support for multiple operations. Those are mostly on CRUD queue based. Like that's why it is called ODBC for web, and that particular ODBC for web support put, post, delete operation, and read operation. So all those operations in oData level can be termed as get, create, update, and delete operation. Then we'll see all of this in picture. Then if we are still left with time in this session, then we would be considering the association and navigation part and the expand URI. And if we are not, then we would be considering the same in the next session. So let's just jump into the system and let's have a quick recap what we studied earlier. So yeah, this is what we had discussion in the last session. So as we discussed, oData, why it actually come into picture is because we want to do some sort of operations where the end user is not sitting and using our SAP GUI screen. He is a client who is actually using our web-based applications. Now, if he is a client in using the web-based application, then he won't be able to access our database directly. So he won't be able to do any kind of querying or updating operation or any kind of CRUD queue operation, which is actually a main any application is based upon. So hence we need a middleman or middleware which can help in performing those particular operations. That's why oData came into picture. So this particular UI client will provide its all the requests of all kind like get, push, put, delete, all those kind of requests to the middleman. This particular REST API is nothing but our oData server or oData client, which will perform all the operation at application server level, query the database, whatever response we are getting, it will come at this application server, and from here we would be our oData server would be returning it to the front end server. So that's why oData is actually required, because now we won't be working as a kind of a person who would be developing the logic as well as the front end designing until and unless you are a full stack developer and you are in that particular role, else you would be working as a backend developer. So backend developer, our work would be mostly in developing and providing a proper REST API to the front end client. So it allows us to creation and consumption of RESTful API. And to enhance the functionality, we have multiple SAP supported annotations already available. One we already saw, the labels, the nullable operations, and all those stuff, which can enhance the functionality and ensure that our work front end application is behaving smoothly, and we can enhance the functionality and the UI of the SAP UFI application directly by changing something on the backend part. So if we have the association navigation part that we would be doing further, its advanced features also support updation and retrieval of data in for a multiple entity. Let's say if I have a purchase order and if I am writing a get query, then a get query is nothing but a in reporting perspective, I can say a read table query. Now what a read table query will do? Read table query will read something into a work area. It means it will just read a single record for me. But what if I want to, whenever I am expecting, whenever I open a purchase order screen, I want to have all the header data as well as all the line item as well as all the schedule line data all to be binded. So it contains multiple lines or multiple entity level information, right? So for that we'll need associations, and association is, as we discussed in earlier section, It's nothing but relationship between two entity, and to use this association, entity will need something which we call navigation. And using a single batch call, we can access multiple entity, and we can perform its updation or retrieval part or creation part. That's all we would be seeing into picture in upcoming lectures. So that is all. And maybe if we check into the system, what we did earlier was we design an entity data model, and that particular entity data model is nothing but a data model which contain multiple entity set, list of associations. So this is the entity that we designed yesterday. So which contain multiple properties, and this particular properties, these many properties are ultimately part of the entity set, and the SAP is behaving very slow. Okay. So these are the properties, and its type, as I discussed, would be a of type EDM dot something, and date and time type, if it is specified, it would be suggestible to set it as nullable, because the 0000 date which is actually coming up, if the date is not maintained for that particular record, would not be a valid date, it would be invalid. But for that we have to already intimate the system that it's the field is nullable. That's why I don't consider 0 as a date, but it is a null field, the default value. Same way also we define the entity sets runtime artifacts, and that particular runtime artifact contains the get entity set methods, and that particular method we redefine because it was earlier inherited from its parent class. The parent class would be nothing but its DPC class, and as we mentioned, we won't be doing any sort of change in the original DPC or MPC class. We would be doing all sort of changes in its extension class. So if you see, these are the inherited method. Now, why we are not able to see get entity set over here? Because the inherited method has already been defined. And if you are in a child class, if you redefine a method, then the redefined method would take a priority. Let's say if we are in a, if you are living in a family, and in a family, my parents have actually built some property, and if I am enhancing it, then the newer version would be the one which I have actually developed or designed. So that would be what we call the redefinition, because that's why we call class is nothing but a real world scenarios. So that's what we did in a okay. So if you see over here, we redefine a method, and what we did over here is we just read the filter operation by IT filter select option. We would be having multiple input parameters which we would be learning as and when we go forward. And by repassing the range, we would be getting the proper return data, which would be as per the user's input provided. Then if you want the all line item record also to be shown, then we have to fill the response context. That is also a return variable, and that response context we would be filling with number of lines, hence it would be returning me the total number of lines in the JSON output. How we actually registered the service? Okay. So registering the service, actually we added the service, and after adding the service, if you see, we have defined for this external service name, we have defined an internal service name that is the same as that of the internal service name, and we use the gateway client to test the service which was actually generated. And the gateway client is the one which we would be using for all the kind of unit testing that we would be doing, and before we ensure that our code and the processing which we have actually is working smoothly before handing it over to the front-end developer. Okay, so the output that we would be getting over here would be a particular that the output which we are getting over here is a output for all the PO header data set that we are getting from get entity set. Now moving forward, so as we already discussed, the kind of operations that we are performing over here are the first operation that we perform over here was query. Okay. Operation which we already discussed, CRUD queue means create, read, update, delete, and query. If I have a database table, okay, if let's first discuss the query operation that we already performed. So query would be nothing but if I have some filter parameters, I'll pass the data, then I can get a data varying from 0 to n. So that is something what we got, what we will call the query. Second thing, which we would be currently now discussing on, would be a read query. Now, this read and query would look the same kind of, because query would be returning you the number of records. Read would also be returning you the record based on the whatever input parameter you pass. The only difference would be the same as that of the read table. Like whenever I'm using the read table, the number of record which I'll be getting always would be 1, right? Because read table doesn't support multiple operation returning, it just return me the first one record. Same way read would be returning me one record, but as it is a ODBC for web, we need to ensure that whatever parameter we are passing for the read query is a primary key for that particular entity. Primary key for entity. Why primary key is required? Because we want to ensure that for the input key parameter we are passing, we are in the final entity set, we should have only one matching set. If I have, let's say, 10 records and I have defined a primary key as the first column, then if I pass the value of any of the parameter in the first column, I would be getting only a unique record, right? That's why while performing any read operation, all we need to pass is a read input, which we would be passing would be a primary key, and here whatever parameter we would be passing would be $filter. So this would work on the filter operation, the query parameter would, and the read or you can say get operation would work on a primary key, and here it can return only one record. If we are not able to find any single record for it, then we would get an exception, and that we would be seeing like what exception we can get over here. Okay, so let's see that particular thing in picture. So over here, if we go in particular gateway, over here in gateway, if you see, I have defined an entity, and the primary key which I have defined over here is nothing but our EBLN parameter, because EBLN is a primary key for purchase order table that we have actually referred. So to do a read operation, the ultimate format would be, after this particular entity set, we would have a round bracket, and in first parameter we would be passing would be the name of the property. It should be same as that of the property name we have defined over here. Uppercase and lowercase should also match. Let's say if I have defined a property name with EBE capital, then LN is in lowercase, then the property name which we would be passing over here should match exactly. So it's EBLN equal to, over here in single inverted comma I have to pass the value. Let's say over here I am getting 4, 5, all 0, 1. Then if I want to read only that particular record, then I would be passing this particular record, and over here, and we would be pressing an enter, and we should be able to get a single record. But we are getting an error saying that PO header set get entity is not defined, because if you see over here, I'll just quickly go into the class. If you remember, we whenever generating a particular oData service, we have got multiple class redefined, and that particular class is like our DPC, DPC-ext, MPC, MPC-ext. In DPC there were 5 methods. For get operation there were entity method defined. This is something which is related to a read operation, which would be using for the primary key based reading. So we would be redefining this method. And after redefining this method, if you see, we have a particular get entity method over here which is available. And what all parameters do we have over here? So let's say in signature we have something called IT key tab. We don't have any filter options over here, which we were getting in IT filter, which we are getting in the get entity set. It means all the operations that we would be doing in get entity method of any of the entity would be based on a key parameters only. So what we will do over here is we have to read the particular data based on our key parameter. So what would be a key parameter over EBLN? So let's just define a variable where we can read the EBLN. Okay, one thing. Second, we would be reading the key parameter from IT key tab. Okay, so we would be reading the read key parameter. Okay, so this key parameter would be LV EBLN equal to we will first check what is the structure of that particular IT key tab which we are actually going to read. So in signature, if we go over here, we have a structure, we have a table type, and its line type is that of the value key pair, and it has two parameters, name and value. So in name we would be getting the name of the property, in value we would be getting the value which is being passed. So over here, if we go, the name would be EBLN and the value would be 45001. But if you see the type defined over here is very generic. It means the name would be string, that is like not our concern, but the thing is value is also defined as a string. So if we directly use this particular value parameter in the select query, we won't be getting the correct output because the type won't be matching, and hence we have defined a local variable and we are not directly using the value parameter over here. So our ultimate purpose, what we would be doing over here is we would be reading this IT key tab. So we would be reading the IT key tab by passing name as equal to the property name over here, and we would be doing a value operation over here. Okay, so this particular value parameter which we would be getting for EBLN would be the value which we are actually expecting for the read operation to get performed. Now if we have a particular data in LVEBLN, then we would be and what is the returning parameter which is actually defined over here is ER entity. So that's what we would be using over here, ER where EBLN is equal to LVEBLN. That's straightforward, right? So as we have already the response defined in ER entity, as we learned in last lecture, the ABAP 7.4 and 5, if we are using a SQL syntax which is of new type, how we come to know that like it is of new type? We are using a host variable. Then all the syntax defined over here should be of new type. So into corresponding field of ER entity is also a variable. So it should be preceded with a host type, host escape character, that is at the rate. Okay. Second thing, if we are, let's say, let's just activate this particular value first of all. Let's see what we are getting over here. It says incorrect nesting. Why? Because we are using the select single. We are using a select and we are not defining single over here. But as I already mentioned, the get entity will always be returning a single value. Okay. So let's just jump down over here. If I press and enter, we are getting a record for a particular value I passed over here, 45001. Okay. Now there are chances that the whatever read operation we are doing over here does not have a value specified. Let's say some user is not passing a valid value over here. So we can say value read and read only if you have a proper data available in it, and else don't throw the exception because we are already checking the initiality over here. So we can make it optional. So that is the advantage of using new ABAP syntax query. We do not need to use the read table and all those syntaxes. We can directly use it like this. Second thing which I want to highlight over here is, let's say if I talk about the PO header set, get entity set level. In get entity set, let's say what we were doing earlier was while hitting an enter, I am getting multiple data. Okay. I have defined already a filter on BUKRS. So if I use a question mark dollar filter equal to BUKRS equal to, let's say I am just passing any kind of random stuff. And if I'm not getting any data, I'm just getting an empty array, or let's say empty JSON array. But I'm not getting any kind of error. Still the status code over here is 200. But whenever we are using a particular get entity, let's say what I have mentioned over here, a query can return 0 to n record. That is valid. But a read query which we are posing over here should always return one record. There are no options that like it can return a 0 record or more than one record. No, it has to have written one record. And if we are not getting any record, then we would be getting an error. So let's say I am passing EBLN and I am passing a value of, let's say 68799 and whatever a random value I am passing. If I am not getting any record, you will get an error saying resource not found for header segment. So that is the known error, very known error you would be getting. So if you are in future you are coming across any error, resource not found for segment, you should be very sure that whatever method which is getting triggered is get entity, and for whatever key parameter you are passing, we don't have any resource defined. So again, I want to make you remember something from last lecture saying REST API is a resource based API and not action based. So for whatever input you are passing, if you are not getting any kind of resource defined, then you would be getting this particular exception or error. The status code over here would be 404. And that is valid because whatever input you are passing is not genuine and it's not valid. Okay. So are we all clear with the read operation?
Yeah, Sumit, you have today you have redefined one more class, right?
No, I have just redefined one more method. Okay. Not a class.
Okay, so yesterday we have also created one.
Yeah, that's what I can show you over here. So yesterday we, whenever while generating a particular gateway service, we came across DPC and DPCXT class, right? So this DPCXT and its parent class was DPC. Over here we redefine a method yesterday which was get entity set. That get entity set method, if like for an ease of understanding, I can write it over here. This was the method that we redefined for query operation, and this is the method that we are redefining for a get operation. Okay. So this is something, a kind of hooks which SAP has already developed. So if you are trying to read something using a key parameter, SAP will directly trigger the call to this method. That is something which we won't be writing, but SAP is doing it for ourselves. So then for query operation,
okay. So yeah, please go on. Yeah. So whenever we want to implement our logic, we will use the DXC class, right? DPCEXT class, right?
DPCEXT class, data provider class, but it's extension. Yeah, we would be using this class. So our most of the logic in oData would be based on DPCEXT. I can say more than 90% of logic would be based on DPCEXT. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, good. So moving forward. Okay, so moving forward, our next operation which we would be discussing on is, we already discussed the get operation. So I want to have a scenario where I can perform the get, create, update and delete. So to make the scenario more easy and understandable, let us just define a custom table which we would be using for our purpose. So let's just define a scenario, what we are actually going to do. Okay, let's say I have a requirement that I want a report where I can have a list of records. Okay, I can have a list of records already defined like this, and I should, this is my Fiori, let's expect that like this is my Fiori application. Okay, this is my Fiori application, and I am like my user's requirement is I want to report something. I want to document something. You want to document something for, let's say, a purchase order. Based on a purchase order, what they want is they want a create button over here. I can mention a, like say, create button over here. So this would behave like a create button for me. Okay. So they want a create button over here. Whenever they call a, like they use a create button, all they want is they want a they should get a pop-up for PO. So the next screen would be, these are I can say this is my report screen, final report screen. Okay, then this is the user interaction, or in terms of, let's say, Fiori, it's a object page. Okay, so over here, whenever a user click on create button, he should be able to get a particular input for PO, purchase order. So whenever he get an input for purchase order, what he user is expecting, we should be able to find whatever purchase order number he is passing. He should be able to get, let's say, multiple information. Let's say PO number, then company code, its creation date and time, and let's say few more fields. Let's say F1, F2, just name a random field. Then after this, on this particular purchase order, he want to document something. Let's say he want to add some his own input. So let's say custom field 1, custom field 2. That's what he want. He want to document something like this. Okay, so for this, if we have and let's say we can also implement a few checkbox. One checkbox we want to add over here. So this is a kind of requirement which a user is having. So when a user is asking for a record where he can document multiple times for a purchase order. Let's say if I want to say that, like, whenever a purchase order for a purchase order, let's say there won't be a kind of 100% delivery, right? The schedule lines would be maintained. So whenever he is getting single delivery for a purchase order, he can get a normal purchase order header detail. In a custom field, he can maintain let's say delivery person name. He can mention the quality, and whether he can set a checkbox whether the delivery was on time or not. Yes or no. That's all he is asking for. But a purchase order can be delivered multiple times. So our report would be having an entry for a single purchase order multiple times. So let's say I can mention it like D0001 for a purchase order, for D0002 for a purchase order. So it's delivery time 1, delivery time 2, and the purchase order number would be EBLN1, EBLN1. So again, if let's say he is delivering EBLN2 purchase order, then we would be again creating delivery number 1 for this particular purchase order. That's what all we want. And same way we can have information about the multiple deliveries, and we want a simple report which you can show see in the dashboard over here. So this is a kind of front end, this is a kind of requirement which I discussed from a front end perspective. Let's now discuss the requirement from a back end developer perspective. So over here he want a dashboard. So for this dashboard, my ultimate target would be, in whichever table my data is getting stored, I want all the information from it. So it means I would be using get entity set for it. My report can have a multiple filter parameter. Let's say if I define a filter parameter, let's say my report would be having a filter parameter for purchase order. Filter parameter for purchase order. So over here we would be surprised, like, why a filter parameter? Why not a key parameter? Because for this, as we see, we can have duplicate entry for EBLN, but this combination is unique. So whatever table custom table we would be defining would be having a key which would be combination of these two parameters, right? So that's why we can say that, like, whatever parameter which we would be having over here would have a key parameter of these two combination. So we would be defining a table. First, step 1 would be, we would be creating a table which can store all this information. Second thing, a Z table. Second thing which we would be doing is we need a input screen. So if we are getting a purchase order number and we are not getting this particular key parameter in the input, then we would be just returning him the value of that particular field. So if we have if we are getting input as a PO, and let's name this particular field as a delivery ID, DID, and if you are not getting the delivery ID, then we would be returning him the default value from purchase order EKKO table. After we have purchase order EKKO table details mentioned over here, a user can add his custom information and click on save button. So whenever he is clicking on save button, we can call a post method because we want to create a record. So we can create, and to create this entry, we can have a post method getting triggered. And let's say after some time, user is feeling that sorry, I have mentioned this information wrong. So if he like again go on this page, then he won't be prompted for a purchase order number. That's how a front-end developer would actually know is if he is getting the DID, he won't be getting an if he is getting a change operation, then he won't be prompting for a purchase order. So what we would be getting is delivery ID plus EBL and both as an input. So if we are getting both as an input, then we would be giving this output based on a input as PO plus our DID. Then let's say if a user is on the change screen, if he after delivery person name he mentioned is feel that this is not the right person, he want to change this information. So he can change this information and again click on the save button over here. So whenever he click on a save button, we'll call up, we'll update the information. To update the information, we'll trigger a put call over here. So and after this last operation, we would be return remaining would be a delete operation. So if the user says feels that like this entry is no longer valid for any of the business scenario, if you want to delete the particular entry, he can trigger a delete operation. So this way, maybe we can consider and have a look on all the possible business scenario, and these are kind of common theory application of data entry, or let's say purchase order delivery maintenance, or let's say get pass maintenance. We can define develop over here, the simplest one. Okay, so let's first define a custom table. So we can define a YSV or let's say YE0 for table. So we can create is a, let me relog in. Okay, so we can table for PO entry. Let's just make this table as let's say transactional table. Delivery maintenance would be allowed, but with restrictions. So SM30 we won't be using. We would be using mandate. Okay. Then over here, just make it as a local object. Then we want some fields from EKKO table. So let's just go in EKKO table and have the proper data already copied from there. Okay. So over here, if you see, I just want let's say EVLN, DUKRS, until this information we can fetch. Okay. Okay. Over and above this, we want one more field as part of primary key, that is a DID, which is not part of the purchase order. So we can click on a plus button over here, and we can say D_ID, delivery ID, and we can make it as a primary key. And let's define this field as a, let's say char20. I hope it's valid. Yeah, char20 is a valid data element. Okay. And we want a few more fields. Let's say custom input 1, and let's define it as a char255. Custom input 2, and we can have a custom input 1 and 2. After that, we can have a checkbox whether the on-time delivery flag, and we can make it as a flag. So it would be a single char1. Okay, that's what we want. We can now define a data class. So data class for transaction data would be, let's say, APPL1. You can define a size category, for instance, let's say make it as 0. Buffering we don't need because we are on HANA, and if you want to log the changes, then we can. But for this demo application. Let's not load the database too much. Okay, so we have this table in place. We have this Y E0 T01. If I go in SE69 and I check the number of entry, I don't have any as of now because this is an empty table. Okay, so now let's define a particular entity for our operation. So let's just go into the service which we are already having. Over here, if I go, let's just close this particular operation. Now, just to add one more thing over here, we already have an entity. Each entity would be having 5 methods assigned to it: get entity set, create entity, update entity, and delete entity. All these methods would be associated to an entity. So if you want to define another entity, we would be getting more 5 methods, and in those 5 methods we can define our operation. So for any new application, let's say if I have a particular project which is of class, let's say Z star, and if I have multiple operations, let's say I have 5 applications defined in it, then I do not need to define a 5 projects saying Z star 1, Z star 2, 3, 4, 5. That's not what I all have to do. All I have to do is in the same Z star project, I can define 5 different entities. These 5 different entities, because if I have a project, let's say if I am working on a project, let's say for delivery maintenance, that delivery maintenance, if it is behaving or creating reports or doing any kind of CRUD queue operations or any kind of stuff or reporting for a single project, then all these entities would be related to each other. Then if I define 5 different projects, then I won't be able to relate it. So all I have to do is in a single project, if I have a requirement for another application, all I have to do is define a new entity in the same project, and I won't be defining a new gateway project over here. I'll just create new entity, and that is all I have to do. So what I'll do is I'll create, and I'll first go in change mode. I'll just create an entity, but if I like directly create over here, I won't be able to pass my structure over here. So what I'll do is I'll just import a DDIC structure type over here, and let's say I want to create an application saying PO entry, and I am just passing my name of the table over here. Over here, I am selecting all the fields other than mandate, because client mandate field is for us, but a client or a user is not does not care about what is your client ID, whether it is 100, 110, 700 or 710. He doesn't care. So we do not. These are the fields which you will be passing if you want to show it to the end user. So mandate field is not required. So we would be removing it. Over here, what would be the combination of key? It would be D_ID and EBLM. So we would be defining it as a key field. So we can have a combination of field as a primary key. It's up to us whatever kind of combination of key we want to define. Okay. Let's just make it as a finish. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So after we have all the particular fields defined over here, we can ensure something which we did in the last lecture. We have to ensure that whatever parameters we have specified for EDM date time, we are getting it as a nullable, because if we don't have data, then we would be getting an exception. So it's a good habit to set it as nullable whenever defining an entry. Second thing. Now we want a flag, right? So this EDM boolean will have 2 valid values. It can have either a particular true and false, that is also valid. And if you don't want it to be true and false, what we can do is we can define it as a EDM string, but it's up to your choice, up to your convenience. Whatever is your habit of developing, you can do it. Like EDM boolean is also fine. So let's keep it as it is as of now. Or let's say I just regenerate this particular service. So I have regenerated the service, the PO entry, and I should be able to see its metadata in that particular service maintenance. So what I'll do is IWFND main service. So as a habit which I said, like we have to keep on loading the metadata again and again as and when we do it. So over here to specify pattern. I just came into a wrong service. Okay, we see what is the metadata for it. And we should be able to find a PO header set over here. Same way a PO entry set over here. So this particular PO entry set has all the information which we are actually passing over it. Okay. Okay, next thing. So let's just start creating an implementation for all the operations that we want to perform. Let's just go by first operation is done. So we have already created a table. Let's mark it as green. Okay. Second thing, we want to ensure that the input which we are passing, we can have two combination of input right over here. Our ultimate requirement is whenever a user is clicking on a create button, he should be prompted for a pop-up, and after the pop-up, he will be passing a PO number in it. And whenever he is passing PO number, all this relevant information which is coming from purchase order, all this information, these are the custom fields. These are the fields which are coming from EKKO table. So if he is getting any information in purchase order, then we should be able to return its relevant information from EKKO table. But if he is passing a purchase order number, it means he just want information for a single record, because he want to create an entry. He don't want to filter a report based on a purchase order, right? So all we had to ensure is we are using a particular read and not a filter operation. So for that, all we have to identify is over here, if you see, I have a EBLN as a primary key. I have DID as a primary key. So if I only pass EBLN, then it will give me an error, because let's see, I'll just go over here. Let's say I have PO entry set over here. Let's just go in edit view mode. Okay, perfect. If I have a EBLN, I'll pass EBLN equal to, let's say, something, and I'll just pass this and press and enter. So what error we are getting? The request URI contains invalid key predicate. Whenever you are using a read query and you want only a single record, all you have to do is you have to pass all the records. So if all you have to do is you have to pass all the key parameters. So let's say if I have EBLN handy, because user is passing it, but I don't know DID. What is the value of DID? So what all I can do is I can pass this field as a blank, but still I have to pass it. So if I have to pass a multiple key parameter, I can use a comma separator. I can pass a DID and put a equal to and press it as an empty column. So over here now the method, it's trying to read the method PO entry get entity, but the method is not implemented. That's why we are getting an error. That's so simple. We can implement the method. But the thing we have to learn over here is, if we want to read a single record, we have to use the read table, get entity method, right? But whenever you are using read operation, if you are not passing all the combination of key fields, you would be getting an error. So you have to pass it, whether you pass it as blank or non-blank, it's up to you. If you pass some, let's say dummy data, if you are like saying backend developer, I will be passing dummy, he can also ensure that. But it's a good habit to pass just a blank combination of inverted comma, that would also work. And one more thing that many a time would be a headache for us, for let's say good kind of visual or let's say good programming methodology, what we do is we put a space over here just to make it distinguished. But if you put a space over here, then it won't be able to identify the key. So we should not be placing any space in between. This space is also kind of keyword. So it's trying to identify a field name with a property space DID, which is not valid. We can't pass any kind of empty space while specifying the proper name of the property over here. Okay, clear? So now we would be going and getting the information of that particular purchase order from here. So all we have to do is, let's just go into that particular class. In the methods, we should be able to find 5 more methods already generated, because we have regenerated the service. over here we want to redefine the EKKO entry. So we can redefine it. Okay. Now over here what we have to do is we can read the key parameter. What would be the key parameter for time being? It would be for us EBLN. Let's just copy the table name just to ensure that the data element we are referring is correct type. Okay. Over here we can read the EBLN. Okay. Equal to value would be value has, because we want to ensure that if we are not getting any kind of input, we don't want to throw any kind of exception. The name would be EBLN, that is the property name, and we want to retrieve the value. And a single inverted comma I just missed. I can pass it as optional. Okay. So if we are getting a particular EBLN value over here, I can, if LV EBLN is not initial, I can select the fields from EKKO into, okay, I want to note down the list of fields over here, so I can open a particular, or you can use into corresponding fields also by using the select star, but let's just limit the number of fields for a good habit, nothing else. So you can like EBLN into corresponding field of ER entity where your EBLN is equal to your LV EBLN, whatever we are getting over here. And as we are only reading a single record, we'll pass again a select single over here. Let's just activate this. We're getting an error. Let's see what is the error. When escape, look, these are again an error for the host escape character. We are using a new syntax, so we should be using host escape character everywhere. Okay. So if I use this particular input and I press an input, resource not found for this segment because this purchase order is not valid. Let's just go in EKKO and find a valid value, because we are currently using EKKO as a master table from where we are getting an input. You can get anything. Let's say I just pick 45001 from here. I pass it over here, press and enter. I am getting the data. These all we have to do. What we are currently doing is we have defined a new entity for the report that we want to develop over here. For this report, we already created a custom table, but we don't have any entry in the custom table. The user is trying to create a new record. For creating a new record, he wants some data from a master or original SAP standard table, that is a purchase order relevant information. So what we did was, if we have EBLN already being passed, we are using the EBLN as the input in a key parameter. As we don't have the delivery ID already defined, we are using the delivery ID as a blank in the input parameter, and we are fetching the information, relevant information, and getting it over here. So if you see, there is a boolean parameter, EDM boolean. So by default, its value would be false. If we have it mentioned somewhere, then it would automatically turn to true. If we are like passing it as a true. Okay. Second thing over here to mention is, if we are having an input parameter as a PO, then of course we are able to fetch the data. So after we have implemented this particular logic, if we hand it over to front-end developer saying, hey, I have already developed the service, while creating, if you have user in passing a PO number, you can call this information, you can call this URI, and whatever information you are getting, you can bind it over here. So this particular object page screen would be binded. So this particular object page screen would be having a data information clear. So this particular screen will have data. Now this particular custom field would be user input field, which a front-end developer would be defining. So he would be defining custom fields as from the metadata of the particular record. Yeah. Speaker. Yes, Rakesh. Hello. Hello, Rakesh. I can't hear you. Rakesh, can you hear me? Can any one of you hear me? Gaurav, Sweta? Okay. 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 Gaurav, can you please speak? I just want to ensure that I am able to hear everyone properly.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay, it was means the issue with Rakesh microphone. Okay, let him rejoin. And are we Shweta, Gaurav, are we all clear? Whatever is the discussion currently going on? Meanwhile.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yes, Rakesh.
Yes, yeah. So can you go to that screen definition is the class where we have written the method? Yeah. The class.
Yeah, please. Yeah. The class.
So here, IT key tab. IT key tab. We have you told that we need to pass the key parameters, right? But here we are only passing whatever ELN.
So that's the thing. So if we are having, okay, let's just to clear your doubt, let's just go us in a debug mode and to ensure that we are getting a correct understanding. Okay. So over here, whatever we are passing is PO entry set, EBLN and DID.
Yeah, but here in the services, whenever we are not entering that both the key parameters, so we are getting that error, right? We are not getting the services, right. We are not getting it. But here we are not. But here we are not passing that key parameter, whatever we are getting it from the screen, from the URL.
That's okay, so that's the thing. We have a liberty. We can have our input already received from the user's input. Then we can write our custom logic as and when we want. So let's say if I have only a EBLN which I am currently using for my processing, I can take EBLN only from the user's input. For the time being, I don't want to use DID because it is blank. So I'll be writing the further condition on it. But if to clear your doubt, let's say if I press and enter over here, I would be getting into debugging mode. Over here, if you see, I am reading IT key tab. In IT key tab, I am getting two parameters. It's EBLN, it's DID. So I am reading the first line because this is all I want for my further processing of this particular second. So we are kind of developing a report. We did the first step. We did the second step of reading input PO. That's why we want only EBLN. That's why I am just reading IT key tab EBLN. On this particular step, when I have to consider PO as well as the DID as an input, because here if I have both the input after creating an entry, then I would be reading a custom table, restart table. And for that I need that. So I haven't written it as of now, but yeah, going forward I'll read that particular parameter also. Understood?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay. So as we have already defined the input parameters, so just to give you an idea, if we don't have any kind of input parameter, or let's say a key parameter which is going to get generated at the time of user's input or before the post call has been triggered, we can pass it as blank, and that blank we can pass it as empty inverted comma. Clear? Next thing, we have done the first step, define a custom table. After passing the user's input, receiving the user's input as a PO number, we can return the response to the front end screen as a XML or JSON whatever we are comfortable with, or whatever, like ultimately it will give the both the input. After we have written all this particular parameter, if the end user, or sorry, if the front end developer wants the input in wants the output in JSON mode, he can add this URI option. For this, we do not need to write any kind of custom code logic. The dollar format equal to JSON, it will give him all the required output. Let's just remove this breakpoint. Okay, so this particular parameter output, which we would be getting over here, would be a particular format, which would be a JSON format, right? Now, as we have all the input parameters already mentioned, and we have purchase order details already mentioned over here, next thing which we are left to do is, user, the front end developer, it's now front end developer's task to create 3 custom fields, and by looking into metadata, he would be able to identify the name of the fields, and this he would be actually binding. It would be custom input 1 to an on TD flag. That's what he would be doing the binding for. And after doing the binding, whatever input user is providing, let's say user is typing the delivery person, name is delivery person, quality, he specify X over here, so it in Boolean it would be converted to true. Post that, he will click on a save button. So whenever he click on save button, we should be able to save the data and create an entry for it. So whenever we are actually going to create an entry for it, what we have to do is, we have to read its input, whatever he is passing, and then we have to create an entry in the custom table. For that, we have to redefine a method called create entity. Okay, over here in create entity, what we would be doing is, we would be reading whatever input information we are getting from the user. Now, how the user first of all would be passing the information, let's learn that, and then we will be going into reading that input and passing it the value to the internal table, database table. Okay, so if I have a particular input, let's say PO entry set, I am passing a particular value over here, PO entry set. Okay, I have specified a purchase order number, which is like 45001. Over here I have DID. This is the information. Sorry, we have not passed the empty code. This is the information we are getting. Okay, let's say if I convert it to dollar, I'll be getting the information in a JSON format. So we can use either a XML format or JSON format, whatever we are comfortable with. You can use this as request. So just give you an overview of this particular screen. This is a gateway client. This we are using for a testing purpose. So the same thing, these would be kind of very much aligned with whatever input we would be getting from the front end developer. So after passing all this input, if he triggers a get call, he would be getting all this information. After getting all this information, he would be reading all the input which user would be providing. Then his part would be defining a payload. So this left particular part, if you read this, what we call HTTP request. So this request would be what a front end developer would be doing, a UI application would be doing for us, and this is the response we would be returning. So this is what we would be returning. This is what we would be getting. This is input for us. This is output for us. So if you want to ensure that after getting all the read table output, let's say after getting the read table entry, we want to use this as an input, you can use this use as request button over here. Click on it. It will just copy this information from right hand side to left hand side, because that is what the front end developer would be doing, right? After getting all this information, he would be binding all this output to the EBLN field, BUKRS field, and all those stuff. Post that, we would be getting whatever input a user is passing into this particular custom input field and all those stuff as part of the create entry. So what we would be doing is we pass the user's request, so we get all the information. We have this custom input 1, 2, and 3 field as a blank. So what we can do is we can pass the custom input. So let's say we can say test IP1 and we can pass it as a test IP2. Okay, and over here let's say whether the delivery was on time, let us just pass a true because it's a boolean. Okay, so after doing this, if we want to perform a create entry, so let's just discuss the requirement. Just a second. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So just to discuss the requirement, whenever we are using a query operation, we have to use $filter. Whenever you are using read operation, you have to pass a primary key. Same way, whenever you are using a create operation, let's just assume we are trying to create a new entry in a database table by using an insert operation. Okay, so whenever you are using an insert operation over here, will we be knowing like what is the value for that particular primary key that is going to get generated? No, right? For that we have to do some sort of operations. So this particular request, this particular create request in a header level, at header level, we won't be expecting any particular key parameter. Same way at body level, we would be expecting all the body parameters. Okay, so all these body parameters we would be receiving, we can expect while doing the create. So in create, we don't expect any key parameters. So if you want to perform any kind of post operation, and if we directly pass the key and do this particular post operation, we would be getting an error saying the specified HTTP method is not allowed for the resource identified, because it's trying to use the key. We can't pass a key while doing the post operation. So all we have to do is we have to delete this key. So while doing a create or post operation, we can pass a key. All we can pass is an entity set. So this is an entity set. Now we can use it as a post operation. All we have to pass is the name of the entity set in a request URI. This is a header part and this is a body part. So we have two header. In header part, we won't be passing any key. And in body part, we will be passing all the parameters that we are currently passing. And we can perform a post operation over here. But while doing the post operation, it says that method create entity hasn't been redefined, so we have to redefine it. So we have redefined a entry but method, but we haven't activated it. That's why we are getting an error. So now let's just identify whenever we have redefined a method, we just have to ensure, we just want to ensure that whatever input we are getting from the user screen in the JSON input, we are able to receive it correctly. So for that, in create entity, there is something called data provider object, IO data provider. So we can use that. So read users input, over here IO data provider, and we can use read entry data. This is a method which we would be using. And over here, after reading the user's input, what we would be getting over here is okay, to read entry data, our ultimate target would be what is the kind of input we would be getting. It should be same as that of the output. So we would be defining a let's say ls input data type, and its type would be okay, and we can use it in ls input data. Let's just activate it. After activating it, let's just put a breakpoint on this end method, because we haven't created any entry as of now, but we just want to identify what is the entry we are actually getting. So we can we have a post method already selected over here. We have a JSON input which is already ready. So header and body part are ready. We can directly press and enter. We should be able to read till the create entity. So if you see, I just reach till the create entity, and this is ls input data, and I am getting all the information which user is passing: EBLN, BUQRS, BSTOIP, BSART, and all the custom input that is also being passed from here. Okay, so we have all the data available in our method at our method level. Now all we are left to do is, while creating any entry, we have to generate the value for DID, because there is a delivery ID that we would be generating, and the mandate parameter would be the SCI mandate, and after that we can insert this entry into our table. That's all we are left to do. So next thing we would be doing is so it will just give created an entry status code, because it's not returning any sort of exception. So if you are not returning any sort of exception, it will give this message, but it doesn't mean the entry has been created. It means the post method is successfully getting executed. That's what this particular 201 status method means. Okay. Now post method is successfully getting executed. Now what we have to do over here is, we can create a work area, because we ultimately, now it's a normal ABAP, right? All we are left to do is, we have to first get the table name in which we want to do a new entry. Okay. So what we can do is, we can define a work area ls, and we can say the y type, and we can define a work area. So we have a work area over here which is of the same type. Fill the value in work areas. So what we can do over here is, move corresponding ls input data to ls e0. Okay. Now the remaining two fields for us would be, first thing would be client ID. So we would be filling the value of client ID. So ls e0 t01 equal to SCI mandate. So you are getting the value of SCI mandate. Now all we have to do is, we have to first check how many entries are there already available in a particular class for combination of the combination of purchase order. So if that for the purchase order we already have an entry already existing, then we would be creating an entry which is of the type +1 of it. Like if, what we mention over here is, what should be the report interaction screen. The reports says the data type should be D-001. So the 3 times 0 that we have to do, 3 times 0 we have to edit over here. So that's a normal ABAP we can perform, and we can get the output generated. So all we have to do is, we have to first check what are the already existing entry available, and then we can define a new ID for it. Okay. So if we are in a post method, we can directly read the maximum ID for it. So first check what is the maximum ID already available. Okay. So all we have to do is, we can define it as a new existing ID already available would be, it would be select. Then we can define read the maximum DID already available in the system. But for what? Maximum DID already available. So we can read this table into, we can define internal variable. We can define it as a DID send DB, because it's the maximum ID available in database, where we can pass the value of EBLN which we are currently already having. It would be like ls e0 t01 dash EBLN. Okay. So if we have a size of RC, let's say we can or cannot have the value also. So we should ensure that we are getting the correct value. So what all we have to do is, after reading this value, we can refer to the maximum value which we are getting. And what is the delimiter we are using over here? We are using dash, or let's say, yeah, hyphen operator over here. So we can split the data. So let's just split LVDID at dash into, we can say data, let's say LV initials, because these are the initials which we would be passing anyway hard coded, and data we would be getting the number. So whatever number we are getting as a maximum, our ultimate target would be to increase the number by 1, because if we have, let's say, if we are whatever maximum number we are getting is 0, then we would be considering next number would be 1. Okay. So for that, if you want to define a number which is of, let's say, 4 length, because here we are getting the value of 4 length, it should be 000 and 1. So let's define a LV count as a type int 4. So what we can do over here is we can increase the count whatever we are getting from the database LV num plus 1. Then post that, what we can do over here is we just want to ensure that whatever data we are getting over here is converting into string, because I want to append it to the output. So if I define a new ultimately our DID, it would be of type, let's say, LVD DID. Its type would be EO T01 dash D underscore ID. So let's fill the value for new D underscore ID. Fill value for new D underscore ID. So it would be LVDID equal to, I can directly use the concatenation operator, and the concatenation operator would, what it will do for me would be, it would directly let's say add D dash. This is a fixed thing which we would be doing, and we can directly pass the whatever input we are getting into LV num, LV count, because whatever LV count we are getting should be the one which we would be using over here to generate a new ID. Let's just check whatever we are doing, is it correct or not. So it says it's correct, but let's just check in the debugging, are we getting the correct entry or not. So once we ensure that whatever data we are actually deriving and using and are able to retrieve till now is correct, if we are getting the correct data, then we would be entering it into the database. So these are the kind of sanity check we would be doing. So DID equal to LVDID, that we can map. Okay. So after checking, let's activate it, and after activating it, let's just put a breakpoint and ensure that like we are getting the correct output. We can put a breakpoint over here also. Over here, let's just again press and enter. We already are using many of the sessions, so the system is stuck up. Let's just want. Okay, over here, yeah, over here in ls input data we are getting all the informations. Now ls e0 would be the one. I just did one wrong thing. It should be ls e0 dash mandate. It should be that. That is something which I'll correct. Now here the maximum DID I am getting is empty, so it means the number I am getting is empty. So LV count should be ideally 1. Now this LV count, if I add over here, it would be wrong because it's generating a ID as D-1, but I want it to be as a 4 character. So I have to define an internal string for it, and then I can use that particular string over there. Okay. So let's just correct the whatever mischief we have done. So here it should be mandate, right? And after specifying this mandate, we can all we can do is we can directly, rather than passing it into this integer directly, we can specify it as a string, because if it's a correct integer, then it won't be getting the additional zeros. So we can specify it, let's say type, or let's say specify it as a maximum character. Okay, and once we have the type defined, after doing the +1 over here, we can directly specify it as a string count s equal to, I can say lv count, and I can just remove any additional space if it has been added. Okay, and I just want to ensure that I am adding three individual space in three individual zeros in it. So all I have to do is I have to, like, that variable I am using is of let's say 4 character, and if I use it as 4, then I have to use the conversion routine over here, lv count s 4 as a and I can specify conversion routine as input conversion routine. So it will give me initial zeros, and this particular ls for which I am actually getting, I can use it over here. Okay, so once we have all the information available, I can again do the debug and check whether we are getting all the correct information which we are actually expecting. So over here lvdid, and I have lv count as for which is 0001. Why? Because I don't have any kind of already available entry in the table. So if I go one step below, I am getting a did, and after this I can check the variable work area which has been filled up. So mandate is correct. I am getting a new DID generated. I have all the information available. I have the user's input provided. All fields also available. So now all I left to do is I have to just fill the entry in the table. So insert entry in database table. That is all I left to do is. So I can insert lse0 t01 into table, and that table would be this particular database table. What is the syntax for insert statement? It should be from, and maybe there's ls. Okay, so we have defined a particular work area which has all the required entry in it, and we can directly insert it into table. Once we have inserted into table, we can fill the returning parameter. So over here, if you see what is the returning parameter in the signature, you would be seeing an ER entity. Like we have something in your particular read table. Whatever read syntax we were using earlier was also having an ER entity as a returning parameter. Same way, it is also having a ER entity as a returning parameter. That is what we can use over here. So we can say fill a returning parameter. You can write at move corresponding lse0 t01 to ER entity. Are we good? Let's just check. Okay. So let's say if I press an enter over here, or what I can expect in the output is we have all the information available over here. We can expect it to get put into table, and we can expect it in the output. So we have the data which has been generated, provided in the output. Now we can go into the database table and check is the table is getting the entry that we are trying to insert. So we have the entry already inserted into the table. Now let's say if I am trying to insert a new entry. So let's say V2, I can write V2 over here too, and let's make it as false, that like delivery was not on time. Okay. And I can directly use and execute. And let's now check. So if over here, if you see, LVDID we are getting is D0002 because we are already getting a DID D0001 from the database. So the next entry has been generated with D0002. Okay. Over here, now let's just use some different purchase order and use a read query on it and ensure that like we are handling all the scenarios. So there is a kind of unit testing which we are doing, ensuring that all the information which we are getting is correct. And for different purchase order, we are following the user's requirement. User says for a same EBL, and if we are generating a delivery ID, it should start from 0, 1 and 2. But let's say if the purchase order is changing, again the sequence number should start from 0, 1. That's all we are currently ensuring. So we can directly use the EBLN equal to, I can pass the value from, let's say, EKKO table. In EKKO, let's pick the 003 number, and we can pass the DID as blank. And after using the get operation, we are getting all the information. If I use this as a request, okay, look, I am just showing you two different scenarios. On one scenario, we use XML JSON as an input. Here we can also use XML as an input. System would be able to parse both. There won't be any difference as such. So to do the post operation, all I have to do is I have to remove the key parameter, because that's the base thing which I actually taught you. So like header should not be having any key. Second thing, the DID and all those information is having. Now over here in the XML, if you want to pass something, all you can do is you have to remove the closing syntax from there. You can close it at end of the closing section, and after this you can use a new PO IP1. Same way we can use it as a new PO IP2. Remove this closing from here, and you can add the closing over here, and we have all the data available. We are not passing DID because it will get generated. We can use post operation over here, and let's just execute and see are we getting the required output, and the system is able to parse the XML. Earlier we were using JSON. So yes, system is able to parse, it seems. What is the DID that is getting generated? It's D0001. That's what we are getting over here. And why D0001? Because we have followed the logic which end user is provided. He says I want a new DID that should be grouped by a purchase order. So for this purchase order, there wasn't any entry, so it just created a new entry. That's all we did. Okay, so we have information already available. So how much we are actually passed through? So we have created a table. After inputting a purchase order, we are returning the required information to the front end screen. After this, we are creating an entry using a post operation. So this is also done. Now, whenever a user is willing to, like after he's now our next thing would be, let's just generate a report by means of which it can see all this information, whatever information has been generated. Earlier, how we used to do it was we are just passing the entity set, pressing enter over here, but we haven't implemented the get entity set over here. Hence, we are not currently getting any sort of output. So that would be a next step that we would be doing. Then we would be updating and deleting the operation, as well as based on this information, we would be returning the data. That's all we would be we are left for. So let's just separate for a 5 minutes break. It's 10:29. Let's just gather back at 10:35 from where we can again start and like close the remaining part. Are we all clear till whatever development we have done till now, or any doubt? Gaurav, Shweta, Rakesh, are we all clear?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So yeah, let's just wait for 5 minutes. At 10:35, we'll again gather back. Thank you.
कहाँ पर है? पनीर वाले आ गए। जो पनीर लेके तो पर्दा उर्दा लगा दियो, बस ऐठा ले आ गए। हाँ तो आता है संतोष लेके आते, वो अपने ना आता है। तो संतोष ले कहते ना अभी आधा घंटा 20 मिनट 30 मिनट टाइम लगता है। आधा घंटा से 45 मिनट अभी टाइम लगता है संतोष को।
Okay, so can we just get started from the where we stop? Okay, perfect. Okay, so yeah, that's till now we have created a set table, and based on input PO we are getting the information, and post which we created an entry on the database table also. Now our next target would be, we would be defining an entity set using which we can get the entries that we have already inserted, and post which we would be doing the rest of the stuff. Okay. So if you see, I just tried to retrieve the entry which we have inserted till now by using the entity set, by passing the entity set in the URI, but I am getting a message saying the get entity set has not been implemented. Okay. So let's just go back and implement that particular method. Okay, so in this particular DPC ext, in the methods section, we can redefine for the PO entry set, we have to redefine the get entity set method. You can use a redefine, and after redefining the method, we can get all the entries from, we can say y e0 underscore t0. Okay, so we can say select, and we want all the entries with all the data, so we can say select star from y e0, sorry, eo t01 into say corresponding fields of table. I can say et entity set, and let's keep it open as of now because we haven't specified any kind of filter till now. So let's just again go back to the gateway client. Okay, over here if I press and enter, I'm getting all the has been created till now. I am getting particular, and I have created 3 entry for 45001. I have created 1, for other I have created 2. So for this report, what we are left to do for the requirement of the user is they want also a filter on a purchase order. So we, as we did on in the last lecture, we can read the filter option. We can read the filter options and filter the data. Okay. So what we can do over here is we can define a filter saying LR. The filter would be for EBLN, so it would be for EBLN type range of, it should be y e0 underscore t01 dash EBLN. Now let's fill the filter operation. So from where we would be getting the filter operations input, it would be from IT filter select option. So we would be looping on that particular IT filter select option. Into data, it would be ls filter, and let's say if we want to use case statement, we can say filter, and we want to apply a case statement on a property. What would be the property on which we want a filter? Let's say we want a filter on EBLN, At the same time, let's just assume that like user has an additional requirement of like giving filter on company code also. Okay, so we can put a filter on BUKRS also. Okay, and over here I can fill the value for that particular LR EBLN, and the value would be value equal to, we would be specifying for LS EBLN line, because that's how we are defining the work area, and LS filter. Then we would be looping onto the select option, and we would be filling the 4 parameters we would be needing. Sign would be whatever values we are getting from directly the input, we can pass it to the output. Same way we can do it for here. Okay. So we have just filled the range for EBL, and now let's define and fill the range for BUKRS. If we are getting any input for the BUKRS also, we would be considering that. If the filter we are not getting for BUKRS, then we would be good. We won't be doing that particular filter. That's cool. Okay, so we have the filters. We have already read the filter whichever we are getting from the user's input in IT filter select option, and now we can introduce a where clause over here. And if we have a VBL EBLN over here, we can pass the range by using in operator EBLN, and if we have BUKRS, we can directly pass the range in BUKRS, and we should be good to go. You can activate the method, and we can press and enter over here. We are getting, now let's filter the data. If we see over here, we have all the data from multiple purchase order. 45001 has 2 purchase order, 2 entries mentioned for it. So I can specify like question mark $filter equal to EBLN equal to, I'll just pass the value for the purchase order. I am getting the data for that purchase order only. Rest all the data is now not available. For same at the same like in the same way, if I want to check the filter for BUKRS whether it is working or not, I can like check what all data actually I am getting by removing all the filters. If you see, I am getting all the data from BUKRS 1003, and we are getting data from 1010. So I can pass it as like question mark $filter equal to, I can copy the property name from here, BUKRS, just to avoid any typo, equal to, and I can select the value from here, pass the value here, and I can filter the value. So if you see, I'm getting the data only for that particular 1010 purchase order, company code. So it is that straightforward. So now if we hand this over a particular development which we have done to the front-end developer, till now what he would be able to do, he would be, whenever a user click on create button, he would be able to get the object-based screen. Whatever input they are passing over here, we would be able to save the information, add an entry, and after the click of save, if the page is getting refreshed, and again we are getting a call on this particular URI, which is this. So if we have a particular call which we are receiving on this particular URI, then we would be able to return all the information. So after save call, we would be able to refresh the particular report and would be getting the data. It's straightforward. Filter would also start working. So now our next target would be, what if user wants to change any of the information they have inserted earlier. So for that, first of all, they should be able to read the information, right? Till now, whenever user was passing the EK value of purchase order, he was able to get the information from get entities method, the read operation. Same way, now if the user pass the information, let's say for here what would be the key? If you see over here in the link, we are getting the information for individual record. So it says if you want to read this particular record individually, you have to pass the information like PO entry set. In the link you are getting PO entry set, DID, and this information. This is the key information which actually system is also internally suggesting. So we can directly copy this information and directly override it over here. Okay. So if I directly press and enter, I will be getting an information, but that may or may not be correct, because let's see, let's check whether it is information we are getting is correct or not. Okay, sorry, it's not correct. How we can how we would be able to derive it is, if you see, we are not getting any kind of DID, or we are not getting any kind of information which we have passed in the custom field. It means the data is still getting read on the EBLN which we are passing, and the data which is coming from the EKQ table. Now our role would be to define a condition. If we are getting the DID, then get the information from the custom table. If we are not getting DID in the input, then pass the information from the standard table. That's straightforward, right? So what we will be doing is, we will be going back and we will be checking the PO entry set get entity we already defined. We will be going into change mode, and let's read one more another parameter which maybe Rakesh was earlier asking. So the same thing we would be defining over here. Okay, so all we can do over here is we can like LV DID equal to value hash IT key tab, and we can pass name this time as a DID, and we can get the value of it, and let's keep it as optional just to avoid any kind of errors. Okay, so our ultimate goal would be, of course, EBLN would be there. I'll always be getting EBLN entry, but that's not my primary focus, right? My primary focus would be DID. So let's just change this condition. Let's make it as a second level priority. And if I am getting any entry in DID, if LV DID is not initial, then I can write my condition over here to read the data from my custom table. Read data from YE0 underscore T01. Okay. So all I have to do is I have to fetch all the data, select star from YE0 T01 into corresponding field of, I can say, ER entity, because that would be the same target which is the exporting parameter for this method that we will be using over here. Where LV DID, sorry, LV DID is not a column name. Column name is D underscore ID. Okay, D underscore ID is equal to DID, and now we can't rely only on the DID, because DID can be duplicated, because we are grouping the data based on purchase order. So we have to pass the purchase order value also. So all we have to do is we can specify EBLN as LV EBLN. Okay, and we just want only a single output record, so we can say select single. And to make our code more robust, we can say that like if DID we are getting, and as well as we are getting the LV EBLN is not initial, because if I only specify the DID and EBLN is being passed as blank, then there are chances that I won't get any data, or I will get the wrong data. Okay, so these are read data from custom table, and this was the read data from master table. Okay. So if you are passing all these entries, after this, if I pass and enter over here, am getting all the data from the custom table which I have already inserted. So how the front end developer would be using this. So I would like copy this URI and give it to him. What I have to instruct him is, if you want to bind any report, you can bind it like this using PO entry set. If the user is clicking on create button, you can directly give me a call on that particular set without passing the key on the save button. On the save button call, I won't be expecting any kind of key. I am just expecting the header as well as the item information. Secondly, if the user is clicking on create button, then I am expecting a purchase order. So you have to pass it like this. But let's say if the user is not coming in the create mode, he is coming into a change mode. Like if he is clicking on a, let's say, particular line item, or if there is any change button in this particular line, if there is any button called change over here, if I create it like a button, let's say if it's a button change design on all its lines, if the user is clicking on change button, he can create he can trigger a get query for that particular line item. I would be expecting a DID as well as a purchase order number, because both will be available on this line item. So I'll be getting a get query. He would be able to bind everything over here. So whenever a user is coming into this particular change mode in clicking on a save button, then my condition would be I should not get a post call over here, but I should get a put call over here. So we are already done with this. This is done. All we have to do is do an update operation, because if the user is coming into change mode, he won't click after click of save button. We are not expecting a new entry to get created. We are expecting an entry to get updated. That's what we are currently expecting. So for that, all we have to do is we can again go over here and ensure that like we are getting the right set of parameter. So for read table, like let's just again go back to the database concept. For a database, if I want to read any entry, I have to use the read table and pass the primary key. Same way, if I want to update any entry, I have to still give an exact location. I have to provide a primary key if I want to do any sort of update operation, right? Same way, if I want to trigger an update call over here, I have to pass the primary key over here, and at that time, whatever method that will get triggered would be an update operation. So for this create, it would be create entity. For the update, it would be an update entity that will get triggered. And what all we would be expecting from the user, or let's say front end developer, we can expect a primary key, as well as at header we can expect a primary key, because we should be first able to identify the record, and then we can expect in body we can expect all the body parameters, so we can get the new values. Let's say if the user is going and after delivery person's name he is adding a, let's say, -1, I should be able to identify and track the value, updated value from here. So that's why we will need the all the requested return body parameter, all the updated body parameter, all the body parameters which include updated and non-updated both. Okay. So for that, what methods we would be redefining is it? I can go over here, click on redefine. PO entry set, and over here you can say we'll need to redefine the update entity. How we would be doing it is over here, let's say if I have this entry already available, want to update this entry. Let's say if I am more comfortable by using JSON, then I can use format equal to JSON over here. I can use it as request, because there is a request header, there is a request body. What I mentioned over here is I am expecting primary key over here. So I can expect a primary key. I don't want any other URI parameter, so I have to remove this. Second thing I have to mention over here is I have to specify all the updated parameters. So I can pass all the parameters like I was passing it in the post mode, and I should be able to update it. So I have to write the relevant logic in update entity method. So if I specify all these operations, let's say if I do any kind of error, let's say if I don't specify the key over here, and the update for us would be a put operation. So if I add the put operation and I press an enter, again I would be getting an error. The HTTP method is not allowed because something I just missed is the key parameter, because I have to pass the primary key. So if I pass the primary key and I press an enter, the error I am getting is the particular method update entity is not yet defined. It's not yet implemented because I just redefined, but I haven't activated. So system won't be able to find it. So all I have to do is, like what we did in the earlier section, we have to do the same thing over here in the update entity also. While doing the create entity, we to read the payload, because ultimately the body part which we are getting over here is called a payload information. So to read a payload, we have to use something called data provider. Over here, if you see, we have something called data provider. So we can directly go and get data from data provider class. That's all. Okay. So once we have the data provider class information available over here, what we can do is we can IO data. Pardon. Okay, and what information we would be getting over here is of that type input is same as that of the input type. So what we can do over here is we can define ls input data, and we would be getting the data in the input parameter over here. Okay, that's straightforward. Let's just activate this. After activating this information, let's just put a breakpoint and ensure that we are getting the right set of information. So let's say IP2, I want to update it to the, let's say, updated. Over here I want to set it as updated, and though the original information over here mentioned was true, false, let's set it to true, just to ensure that like we are getting all the data which is getting changed from the payload level. So if I press an enter over here, I have already put a breakpoint. So if I go in debugging, I check the ls input data, whatever I am getting over here is whatever data is being passed from the payload, DAD, all those stuff, and the updated information which I pass it from the payload is IP1 updated, IP2 updated, and I can use it. So over here we would be getting the response. So for in case of delete and update, the content won't be there. We will just be receiving the green signal, that would be a 204 200 2 star kind of status code, and it would be a green signal for us. We won't be getting any kind of response body. So once we have all the information available over here, all we would be left to do is we can define a work area. So we can say E0 T01, and its type would be YE0 underscore T01, and let's say fill work area, move corresponding ls input data to ls E0 T01, and we can set the value for particular mandate to side mandate, because that is something which is not being passed in the payload, so we have to fill it. Now once we have all this information specified, let's just recheck whether we are getting all the correct information in the work area. If we are having all the information correct in the work area, then we can directly update the database table with the updated information. Maybe the breakpoint position has been shifted because we have added additional code lines. Okay, so if you see, in ls E0 T01 is the one which is my table work area. I am getting all the updated information over here. So all I am left to do is I can directly write the modify statement. So I can say update database table. So I can say modify I have to modify which table. So I would be updating the y e0 underscore t01, and the source for it would be from e0 underscore t01. I can directly press and enter over here, execute it, and once the data has been updated, I can again put a get query on it, and I can recheck whether the information which I have actually updated is correctly reflecting or not. So if you see, I am getting the updated information over here. So the data is getting updated correctly. So for a front-end perspective, what all functionality has started working now? So they are able to create the record. After creating the record, whenever they are clicking on change, they are able to see the updated information. They are able to see the information that they have stored earlier. If they are like clicking on create and not on change, so on the create they are getting the PO information, PO pop-up. In the PO pop-up, we would be returning the information. After click of save, we are able to create a new record. That record will start reflecting over here. We are also able to change it by using the change operation we have implemented. So this is also done. Okay. Now what last operation we are left to do is let's say if after the change there is also a button for delete, and the user want to delete a record for any kind of business scenario, we can also give a delete operation for this particular information. So for the delete operation, as I already mentioned, for this the read query, we have to pass the primary key. For update also we have to pass the primary key. For create and query we don't need any primary key, we just need the identification. For create we don't need any identification too, because that is all which will get auto determined in the create entity method. So in the delete, if I want to delete an entry, then I have to give an exact address of that particular entry to a database and database table, right? For that, all we need to do is we have to provide a primary key. So primary key is the only input that we would be expecting. We won't be expecting any kind of input data for it also, because if we are going to delete an entry, it has 10 cells. Ultimately, what system would be doing is it will identifying the primary key and directly deleting the entry. It doesn't like system doesn't care what is the data which you are passing over here. So we don't need the payload. So no payload or body part information is required. Okay. All we have to pass is the primary key. So if you see over here, we already have implemented get entity set, update entity, create entity, and to perform the delete operation, we have to implement the delete entity method. So for the PO entry set, we have to redefine the delete entity method. Delete entry. To delete an entry, all we need is an identification. So let's say if I have this particular entry already available, I want to delete it. If I select a delete operation over here and I press an enter, I'll be prompted to implement this delete entity method, which I haven't implemented till now. So this particular method is required for a delete operation to get performed. Okay. So this delete entity method we are implementing. So first of all, we should be able to identify what all information we are actually getting in it. So I just redefine and activated the method. Let's put a breakpoint and identify what all information we are getting while using the or performing the delete operation. So if I go one step back, check from where the method is getting triggered. All I am receiving is the name of the entity set, the technical request context, the objects, and the main thing which I would be focusing on is IT key tab. So here I would be getting the key information, and which I can actually refer and delete. So the kind of information or kind of processing we would be doing over here would be the same as that of what we did in the read information. So we can define it as a read and we can define one more parameter for So we can now delete the entry. To delete the entry, all we need to do is, first of all, we can directly delete the entry. First of all, we need to read the key parameter. To read the key parameters, all we have to do is lvebeln value hash it key tab. In this it key tab, we can pass the name parameter. And that name parameter would be, first of all, let's say if we are reading EBLN, it would be EBLN for us. Okay, and we have to read the its value part, and let's make it optional. Same way, lvdid equal to value hash it key tab. Yes, Rakesh.
Yeah. So like this means read parameter. Can we not merge both the LV, EVLN and LVDID in one statement?
I don't think you can, because what is the property of read table? Let's just forget this. Just assume you are only having
read table. We can pass the multiple where clause, right? In a where clause, we can pass multiple conditions, no? In a normal read statement.
Okay. Okay. Let's just create that read table over here. Let's say if I have a table with name and value over here, I have a DID, I have EBLN, I have D all 001, and I have 1 2 3 4 5 over here. Just don't use a new query. Also, just read a use a read table and just tell me how I can read both the entries in a single read table. Because a read table can only read a work area. It can't read multiple entries in a single go. Can we?
No. I'm not reading. I'm just read the value into the work area. Okay, work area having the same structure, and will based on that two conditions. Based on the two conditions, we can read it, no?
Okay, you are saying ki read table this name, then you again want to specify the name equal to this. But the target value I'm having is only one, right? On LHS I can have only one parameter. I can't have two. This is something which you are saying like. This is what we are doing now. We are reading the structure. Okay, let's just create a work area. I'll say ls work area or work area equal to value hash. Don't use value hash also. Just keep it simple. It key tab. Let's read line number 1. Either I can read line number. I can read one line at a time, right? I can read 2 lines at a time while using read table. So I can read either this or either this. So I can read it key
based
tab
on
line
1. Based on these two parameter, we are reading only one. We are checking only one value, right? Based on that EVLN and whatever the EVLN and LVID we are passing it from the screen. Based on that, we are checking whether that entry exists in the system or not, right? That is what we are doing.
Entry exists in the internal table input we are getting, or not the system. Because if you write it on in the older way, like just forget the newer way. If I write read table it key tab into, let's say, ls key tab, with key name equal to EBLN. Okay, can I pass again the same parameter over here? What output will I be getting? I'll always get the single output. I won't be able to get two outputs, right? So there is no way means of which I can read multiple lines in a single read table. That's not a functionality of read table. That's the base thing, right? Can I read 2 lines
saying that we are reading the two different fields, right? Okay. The table having only the okay. I understand that because of that
only 2 columns. Having the okay. Yeah, because it's a name value pair. These are the only 2 fields. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I maybe initially I already shown. Yeah.
Yeah. I got it now.
Okay, so this is a name value. That's why. Clear? Okay. Okay, so once we have read the key parameter, all we are left to do is a delete entry from database. So what we have to do is delete, and after using the delete statement, we have to delete that particular database table. So what would be the syntax for delete would be, we would be deleting that particular entry, and uh, after delete, we would be using the database table. We would be using where clause, where EBLN, in which it would be good to have follow the same sequence. So we would be specifying DID first. There is no rule, but it's a good habit to specify the key in the same sequence we have defined. And EBLN equal to EBLN. Okay, so this is something which we are doing wrong, so we are getting an error. So we have to maybe delete table. Y0 is unknown. Let's just check. What is the syntax? If you want to use delete database table, delete from this, where I can say D underscore ID equal to so delete from that particular table where the key is matching. So I can delete those entries by this. So only the precondition I have to apply over here is if LVEBLN is not initial and LVDID is also not initial. Like just to keep our code as secure as possible and as accurate as possible. So if I go into particular, let's close this. Y0T01. I am getting 3 entries over here. So if I go over here, I want to delete all the entries from this particular line where this key is matching. If I use a delete operation, I press and enter, my entry seems to get deleted, and I can see this entry has been deleted successfully. So after maybe post this, we should be good to hand this over to our ultimate front-end developer, and who can, on delete operation, we can suggest them. You can, for delete operation, the URI you should be doing is using is this particular URI. Right. That's straightforward. So this is all about a create, read, update, and delete operation that any report. This is a kind of one of the base thing any oData developer should be needing. If there is a kind of information or a kind of knowledge any backend developer is having, he would be able to develop any kind of entity within all the basic CRUD queue operations. So are we clear?
Yeah. And Sumit, I see that 2 more button was there in that screen. Can you go to that service screen?
Here?
No, no,
Okay.
no, no.
You mean the gateway client here? So
Patch
these
and
are all
merge
the
was there.
yeah, patch and merge were there. So today I am discussing on this. Patch and merge are nothing but patch is combination of get and put. Merge is also combination of multiple put operations. But the same we would be discussing in the upcoming lectures. So there is a part of that curriculum. So first my target is to make you all clear for the most basic thing. Once your basic stuff are clear, we can go ahead with the remaining stuff. Let's just discuss the let's say patch operation. Merge and head is something which you won't be using that that usual. So let's say we can discuss the patch operation for the time being. The merge and delete we would park for now, and maybe in the next lecture we would be discussing it. So let's just focus on patch. So let's say I am a front-end developer, and what I would be doing is, let's say I want to update something, but the information which I am having is I am having all the information, but I am not passing all the information to backend developer. Let's say if I click on change button over here, if I click on change button over here, one second. Okay. If I click on change button over here, I am getting all the information. Then let's say if the front end developer is not passing me all the information, he is passing me just the information that particular like of the field which is actually getting. If he is just passing me the information of this field while doing a put call, then it would behave as a patch call. So let's say if I want to get an information from the table, let's say for D0001, or let's just read the URI from here. I want to for this particular line, so I'll just copy the URI from here. Okay, once I have all this particular entry, let's say I want to convert it into a JSON mode. And once we have the JSON mode information available over here, let's say I want to update something. Use as request. Okay. Now let's just put a breakpoint at multiple locations just to give you a visual of how and what sort of method will get created in what sequence. So I'll just put a breakpoint in all the methods. So I'll put a breakpoint on get entity. I already have a breakpoint over here. Create, I'll put a breakpoint upon. I'll put a breakpoint on get entity set, and I'll put a breakpoint on update entity. Okay. Now let's say if I am doing a sort of patch operation, then what is patch? So patch, like as the name defined, patch is it's a combination of get plus put operation. Let's say if I have get operation which is returning me this sort of field. So these all the properties which is part of this particular entity. This is get operation. Now let's say after getting this all the information from the front end, I am getting a put call, the update call. But in the update call, I am not getting all the information. Now if I directly write particular, let's say update entity, this particular update entity operation, modify from here by getting all the information, then rest all the fields, like if I am not passing these three information, let's say if I am not passing F and all these four fields of information, these fields will get deleted, right? I mean, if I am like directly getting the data from input, I am trying to move corresponding it into a work area and passing it into a work area and like updating a database table, these all four fields will get deleted. But if these four fields will get deleted, then I'll lose some of the information. That's why the patch operation will come into picture. From the front end, they'll only trigger a put operation, but it will get converted into patch. And over here, for testing purpose, we can directly use patch operation and test it. So what the patch operation will do, it will first check. There are step one would be it will check if all the fields are available in payload or not, or you can say body part. If all the information are available in payload, if it is true, then it will directly call the update entity. If all the fields are not available, if all the fields are not available in payload, or you can say body, then there are two sequence of method call will happen. First of all, a get entity will get triggered, and then after the get entity, the call which will happen would be for a particular update entity. And what the system would do is, after using the get entity method, if I go in get entity, what I am doing over here is I am using the key parameter, right? Over here I am using the key parameter. If I am using this information, that is also one of the mandate for update entity to work. So if I am using update entity or patch, I won't be able to use it without a key parameter. Then if I am like not passing the key, then I would get an error. So that's for sure that I would be getting the key parameter. Then from the key parameter, I would be getting all the information from the database. Then a particular combination would happen where like all the information which I am getting from the front end, I mean the JSON of the user's input, plus whatever information is not being provided from the user's input, I'll get it from the get call that has been triggered. That is something what we call a patch operation. So get entity will get triggered, then update entity will get triggered, and the combination of which will get updated to the database. So currently, if you see over here, for this D all 0, I'll just open the database table also for you. So what is the information we are currently using? D all 01 and 45 all 01. So these are information which we are currently trying to update. So over here, if I like use V2 and I use a V2 also over here, the rest of the field like F, NB and all those stuff is not available currently. So if this is not available, if I use a update statement or modify statement, then it will get deleted. But that is not something will happen if I use the patch operation. And this is something which we would be using manually over here. But ultimately, if from the front end, like from the front end developer's perspective, from the front end developers perspective, if they have only a method, let's say create entity or create entry, then they will have update entry and all. So if they call an update statement, or let's say they have a method called http method, that's what something they specify in the method calling. So if they specify http method as an put and they are not passing whole JSON, then this put will automatically or internally get converted into patch operation. So if I use a patch operation over here, pass the data, if I use execute, then first you will be able to identify the get entity method that is getting triggered. In the get entity method, they will be able to identify the key parameters. They will be getting all the data, ER entity. And if you see in this ER entity, what information we are currently having is the older information of this particular test IP1, IP2, right? If I go back, I press again and execute, I would be reaching till the update entity. A sequence of call is happening for the update entity also. And here I am getting all the information. After this, if you see over here, though I am not passing the information for all these parameters in the payload, I am still receiving it in over here. And the information which I am passing from the front end, the V2 and updated information is preserved. Like it's not clearing it out or not taking it from the database, it's taking it from the user's input. And that is something which will get updated in the database. So if you see over here, the updated information would be a V2. So this V2 is getting updated in the D all 01, 45 all 01. This is the entry which is getting updated. So this is the patch operation. This patch operation, we do not need to define it externally. We do not need to kind of define any sort of separate method for it. But if we are defining, if you have defined get entity and update entity for the operation, then the system will internally identify whether they have to perform a patch operation or the put operation. Let's say if I'm again triggering a get operation over here for D0 all 4501, if I'm getting all the information from here, a get entity will get triggered if I perform a get operation. Next thing, if I have all the information available over here, I use it as a JSON. System is a bit slow. Okay. Fine. So I get the backend get call. I'm getting the data. I'm using these as request. And if I have all the properties available over here, then the system won't override anything from here. So if I, let's say, v23 and I'm specifying v23 over here, I can't specify dollar format the URI over here. I have to remove this. And as you can see, like though we are directly coming into get entity because we have externally specified patch, which a front-end developer can't specify. And here we would be getting all the information which we are passing from the user's input. So this is something what we call a patch operation. Patch is patching. Like if I say patching, it means it's a combination of one thing which is not provided and combination of one thing which is being provided, and a get entity will get triggered. Get entity will get all the information from the database, plus it will get all the information which user is providing. If I talk about the priority would be 1 for the user provided input, and the priority would be 2 for the input which actually database the information for which is actually being fetched from the database. So if we are not having any kind of information which is missing in the user provided input, then this information won't be used at all. If we are having any information which is actually missing, then the database information will be taken care of and it will be picked up. If we don't have any patch operation available, then what would have happened is, if you are not passing this sort of information, it will get cleared out in the database whenever you are using modify statement. But that is a functionality of patch operation which is helping us to ensure that any of the information is not getting deleted from the system. That is something which we call patch operation. Are we clear? Okay. So Rakesh, Shweta, Gaurav, are we clear with all the things that we discussed today? So all we would be doing today is just, yeah. Yes, Rakesh, I can't hear you. Hello. 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 Yes. So first of all, can you hear me? Of course, I this remaining topics which I have actually covered written for the upcoming sessions only. We won't be able to cover it due to the lack of time, but we will be covering it in the upcoming sessions. We would have a quick go through of the topics that we covered today, because these are the main basic things that we should be needing the knowledge of in the upcoming lectures also. So let's just go through it and then we can wind up the session. Okay. So we'll just take 2 more minutes to get a fresh recap of everything. And I would just request all of you to give a try on yourself also to ensure that you are getting everything we are teaching in the upcoming lecture. Pardon, Gaurav, hello, Gaurav, can you please unmute yourself and speak up, because I can't hear you. I can just see you typing.
Hello?
Yes, Gaurav.
Yeah, actually I was telling that can we get some assignment kind of thing?
So maybe we have to you have to maybe get in touch with Rahul. He would be the right person who can share all the kind of assignments and all those stuffs, because he is the one who is managing everything. So you can get in touch with him. I'll also talk to him. So maybe he can share any of the information he is having. that you can maybe
Okay.
get.
And what generally asked in means companies about oData?
So oData, it's like if I talk about my experience, what people actually ask and kind of interviews which I take, what we usually ask is, first of all, you should be clear on the EDM part, entity data model, which I actually taught. What is entity data model? That many of the people who actually read theory and haven't gone and through practical experience, they won't be knowing what is EDM, the entity data model, which contains entity types, sets, and all those things. Then people won't be knowing how and what kind of parameters. This is the main thing which I actually just define on the CRUD queue operation. Everyone knows the oData, using oData we can perform the CRUD queue operation, but people are not sure whether in create operation we should be passing the query, do we need the primary key or not, what body parameters, in what all formats we can pass. In read, is it mandatory to pass all the queries? In query parameter, can we pass only partial query or we have to use dollar filter only? These are all the things which we actually practically have seen in this particular lectures. The two lectures will be the thing which will be asked in the practical sessions. Going forward, what all also they can ask is, if we are using navigations and all, then how we can taste it using gateway client. Let's say if I have define multiple relation, then how I can create an entry or get the multiple entries in a single call. That is something which would be part of our upcoming lectures that we would be covering. But their main question would be around, are you clear on your basics or not? Do you know what all parameters would be required to perform a create operation? Yes, it should be a key no key parameter would be required, and all body parameter should be containing all the payload information. Read should be containing primary key. Update and delete also is playing around primary key, but query, here you have to use dollar filter. And one more confusion which actually many of the practitioner is having is, if you are using any sort of URI parameter, let's say if I use dollar filter, it doesn't mean I can directly use dollar filter and it will start working. No, these are just the URI parameter, just to ensure that all the information which you are requesting is the request is reaching till the hook method, like get entity set method or whatever method we are specifying. The custom code writing is your responsibility. You have to write the custom code in a way that whatever backend request is coming, it's being reported, or it's being kind of responded in minimum time. Why minimum time? Because there is a gateway client, there is a SAP GUI screen, so it might be having some work process time assigned which would be higher than that of the browser. But let's say if I am opening a particular browser screen and I have put a backend query, and let's say to get a data you are putting a submit call, it's taking longer and longer time. Maybe within 5 to 10 seconds your system front end screen will get timeout, so you will get 500 server timeout error. So you won't be getting any error in backend, but ultimately you are not responding faster enough to get the output, so you will be getting an error. So that is all the main things which you should be taking care of, and that is the thing, the practical scenario which would be asked in the interviews. The main, sometimes the interview question would be around your URI option also. You should be able to respond, like how you can convert your response which is coming by default in JSON, by default in XML format to JSON. That would be using URI option dollar format JSON. To get all the information, line count, you can use inline count all pages. You should be able to get the information using metadata. As a developer's perspective, if you want to get the or analyze the issue, you have to use SAP DS debug true. And other than that, there are certain trace tools and all which is available, which might be part of your interview questioning, but we would be covering it in the upcoming lectures, by which I will show you how, if the front end developer is, let's say, executing few requests, and let's say after 1 hour he says this scenario is not working, how you will be able to test what kind of input you header and payload information he was passing. Those are the trace tool which are available for any kind of backend development, and which I would be teaching to you. So main thing which they would be asking is around this main base concept. If you are clear on the CRUD queue concept, you can develop any oData service, be it any complex, because ultimately once we have reached from gateway client to ABAP hook methods, we know we are a good ABAPer, and we can write any kind of complex coding we want to write. So that would be straightforward, but ultimately you should be clear enough on the CRUD queue part. The create, read, update, delete is the query on which you would be getting most of the questions. Okay. Yeah. So we are good maybe for this particular session. in upcoming lectures, we would be considering the association navigation part, how to update and put a batch call on multiple entities in the single call, how to use $expand URI. Maybe in the last lecture, we would be considering the trace part and all. And so maybe we should be good. And if we have, if you are getting a scenario where you have to face an interview for oData and all, then you should be able to clear it easily. Then there won't be any issue. Okay. And if you have any query post the oData session has also been completed, you can directly write on that particular contact at EduOcean, or maybe you can get in touch with Rahul, or you can, if you are part of the WhatsApp group, then you can also pose a query over it. So we'll still be in touch if you have any query. Okay. So yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot for joining. Maybe you can give it a try of whatever development we have done till now. This from backend and front end perspective. So you should be able to, you should be clear on what portion would be taking care of if you are a backend developer, and what kind of query you should be asking to your front end developer. And then yeah, if you are like while doing any hands-on, if you are running into an issue, then I would love to solve that. So like just give it a try on yourself, then you should be more clear. Just keep on doing hands-on. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot for joining. Have a nice weekend. Bye bye.